Well, look at this. You stumbled on to Trade Show Guy Monday Morning Coffee yet again, or maybe it's the first time. Either way, I welcome you. Thank you for stopping by. This used to be, for 4.5 years, a weekly Monday morning thing. Since about August of this year, I've backed off every 2 or 3 or even 4 weeks. I was getting a little burned out, I guess. Anyway, it's back in the saddle again for this month of October. My name is Tim Patterson, and my company is TradeshowGuy Exhibits. You can find us at tradeshowguy.net. If you haven't been there, you might check it out because that's kind of the jumping off point to websites for the two books I've written about trade show marketing, which you can find either the free digital copy or a free chapter of one of them. Of course, a link to our main website, a link to our exhibit design search for any sort of exhibit you want. It's all right there, tradeshowguy.net. So this week, I got an interview with a guy I've talked to a number of times before on this show, if you are familiar with what we've done here in the trade show world. Kevin Carty is the Executive Vice President at Classic Exhibits in the Portland, Oregon area, and is very plugged into the industry. Of course, he's been doing this for a few decades. And the other thing I wanted to talk to him about, not only how the industry is doing with slowly coming out of the pandemic. There's a lot of issues that are still being a big challenge to everyone. I wanted to kind of talk to him about some of the not only the challenges, but Exhibitor Live, which is coming up. They're going to be at in, I think, just a couple of weeks at the end of October, early November. Also, he was pretty involved in some of the advocacy, the lobbying, I guess you could call it, for the event industry during the pandemic through congressmen and Congress and that sort of thing. So I kind of picked his brains on that, how that went. Anyway, it's a fun interview. A lot of good stuff here, stuff that I hadn't known yet. And yes, the challenges are still there for the trade show industry, but Kevin's got his finger on the pulse, as it were, and shares some great stuff. All right, it's Trade Show Guy Monday Morning Coffee. I want to welcome Kevin Carty, Executive Vice President of Classic Exhibits in the Portland area. Kevin, it's good to see you again. It's been a while since we've caught up.
Yeah, it's good to see you, Tim. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so I'm curious to know, I know that you guys are going to a show coming up soon, and we can talk about shows coming and going and stuff, but the Exhibitor Live is it in November?
Yeah, the final day setup is on Halloween in Las Vegas, and then the show itself is on Monday, Tuesday, the 1st and 2nd of November. So it's a 2-day show instead of 3-day show. If I take the opportunity to say, I'm one who's been a big advocate of doing that as a 2-day show for a long time. So I kind of hope that this sticks. I don't know if it will, but I kind of hope it does.
Well, I hope you have a good show. I'm curious, what are you guys setting up? The same size as what you've done before? Some people are pulling back, others are expanding,
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. So we looked at this pretty critically. Going into the 2020 event in March, we actually had we did something different. We typically have a 20 by 30 island, usually double decker, pretty big presence, et cetera. In March 2020, we were actually going to be splitting off and having a 10 by 30 peninsula, but it was all custom wood fab. We were going to be launching our new branding, our new logo, and our new corporate branding. And then at the end of the same aisle, by design, we had kind of a unique space, which was a 15-foot wide space that was kind of in a weird spot at the end of an aisle. So it was really visible, oddly, when you were walking down the aisle. But then we had the ability to take it up really high as well. And that was going to be launching the Symphony product line at the time. And so in looking at this, we had the booth built internally here, and it was ready to go. But for this year's show, like everybody else, we're kind of looking at it and saying, okay, well, we're not sure what attendance is going to be. Numbers are looking okay, but not certainly normal Exhibitor Live numbers. And so we still wanted to put an emphasis on getting the Symphony product line out there, but also still highlight our brand. So we kept the 10 by 30 perimeter, so we can go high with it. And we're going to show off a combination of the new Symphony, which, while it's not new now, it's been sort of going like gangbusters as the markets come back. It's been real popular, and we're showing some custom elements as well.
I'm curious if you get a sense of from other exhibitors, even through some of your distributors or show organizers, how they perceive this show will roll out. A lot of the shows over the summer have been 40, 50, 60% full level of attendance, both on the attendee side and exhibitor side. What are you hearing, if anything?
Well, there's some real complicating factors to the
Right.
answer to that question. Number one, I think there's different numbers that we're hearing, and I'm not saying anyone's not telling the truth. That's not the case at all. I think it's just reading the data differently. But I would ourselves and other people I know who are going are certainly anticipating that it'll probably be, near 50, say 60% of what normal attendance would be. And then when you layer in staff for the booths into those attendance numbers, that's going to be less as well. I mean, we're bringing less people, but probably the most complicating factor, I believe, is on your traditional attendee side, the number of large events that are going on at that exact same time, both either right prior, during the event, and or right after that event, is pretty significant.
Really?
And some of them are happening in Vegas, but some of them are happening in Chicago. They're happening all over the country. And so for a corporate exhibitor, it's a tough time to try to go to our event, which they may normally go to. So there kind of remains to be seen. And this is just me, my own speculation, no one else. I wonder if some of those registrations are carried over from the last time we had the event. So people who were going to the 2020 event, will they be there, even though that they're registered to go because their registration carried over? Will they be there? I don't know. Thankfully, there's some big shows happening in Vegas that week. So if nothing else, I think we might get some people roaming from one show to the another, at least come over for a part of a day to see the event.
And with 2 days, it'll certainly be more focused. I'm hearing
Mhm.
anecdotally, and I'm curious to see how it plays out at this show, is that with less people, even less exhibitors, the people that are there are serious about it, and they're having in-depth conversations, and a lot of the companies still coming away with pretty much as many leads as they would have gotten at a regular show. Have you heard that more than I've heard
So
that a couple times?
I've heard that consistently every week,
Yeah,
actually, and
good.
to me, I think a perception might tell us, oh my gosh, there's less people there, and it doesn't feel as crowded and is that good. But I go back to I attended outdoor retailer in Denver in August, and
Mm.
I was real intentional about talking to as many exhibitors as I could as I went around, knowing that a lot of the normal exhibitors weren't there, corporate travel restrictions, et cetera, but there were some big exhibitors there and a lot of smaller ones. Um, and everybody was really excited about the quote unquote quality of the leads,
Mm.
of the people who are coming by. And so if you think about that on a large corporate event, exhibitor really would be no different, although it's a small event. But we love the big attendance, but oftentimes the folks that, let me use ExhibitorLive as an example, the folks that are maybe attending the CTSM classes, it's great having them come through and see your products and be able to explain all those. But oftentimes they're not the buyer, but they're there to attend the courses. And if as long as those buyers though are still coming to the show, everybody's going to be super happy. And
Exactly.
we're hearing that literally show after show after show in client reviews.
Well, that's good. Even though some shows are still getting canceled or pushed
Yeah.
months down the road, I am curious to know this kind of a sideline. I don't want to get too far down this bunny trail, but the one show that I'm very familiar with, of course, is Natural Products Expo West, which is Anaheim. I'll have a number of clients there, so I will be there. And I'm curious, that's 5, 6 months away. What will the environment be at that point, and how many people will come back? I know the numbers that they've had through 2019, which was the last show, were very glitzy, 80,000 plus
Mhm.
attendees, 3,500 plus exhibitors. I can't imagine it being that big, but I'm just curious where all that will land. So yeah,
I,
there's
I
a
am
little
I
more.
am I am too. I think it'll be interesting to see what the final audits are on the Philly event. It kind of gauges what happens, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Our next really huge event is CES, right? And it'll be, I think that's going to be a bellwether for us for 2022. The good news is people are still buying exhibits, and they're wanting to spend money. They're wanting to get back to the face-to-face marketing plan, which is encouraging, and they're seeing positive results. Even though there's less attendance, they're seeing positive results. So I think we'll continue to see growth in the builds and even bigger builds. But it's going to be mentally hard sometimes, I think, to get past that. Oh man, I'm used to seeing whatever it is, 40,000 people here, and there was 18.
Right.
But to your point, if they're looking at the business generated from it, if the business generated from that show is similar to years past from a percentage wise, then people aren't going to complain. It's costing less to send less people maybe to work a booth, or to send less people to attend.
Yeah, and the landscape of everything has certainly changed. And I'm curious, in supply chains, shipping issues, staffing issues. I know that in July, you made a point of putting out a document on how critical the issues were, especially with supply and shipping. What has changed since then, if anything? Has any of it gotten better? Has it gotten worse from your perspective?
Quite frankly, I think the wood issues have actually gotten better. So there's some highlights there. We all saw big spikes. You saw it in your own home life if you were going to Home Depot, but big spikes in wood
this summer. So yeah.
Oh my goodness. But the wood definitely leveled out. It didn't go back to pre-pandemic prices, but it leveled out to at least some reasonable pricing. But in general, supply chain has not gotten better, and it's going to continue to be a struggle. I was posting something on LinkedIn recently. I work in the advocacy team for EDPA, and my focus right now on advocacy for the last several months has been specifically on tariff resolution or tariff reform and whatnot, and that's been a big effect. Getting metal, whether you're aluminum, steel, whatever, the costs, number one, are higher than they've ever been, and they're continuing to climb. I share this with people openly, just from a perspective. We placed 3 significant orders for our profiles that we own to be extruded locally here in Portland. Our other big extrusion provider is in Utah, and then we do have one offshore provider outside that's in Vietnam. One of those orders was placed around the 15th of March. The other one was around the 15th of April, and the other one was around the 15th of May. None of them have been delivered yet, and they keep getting pushed back. Trucking issues. People are starting to kind of, I'd say in the last 3-4 weeks, it hasn't gotten better on the trucking end because there's such a driver shortage, but people are planning more. I mean, I never thought, Tim, I'd see a day where we were shipping exhibits out of here to go to a Las Vegas show 7 days prior to when it had to be at the next dock, when normally from Portland, it's a 2-day drive. But people are padding that. Labor continues to be an issue that's affecting supply chain. Our extruder in Utah is a great example. It's material, raw bauxite. They're having a hard time getting their billets or bauxite to get the billets done, but also just getting people hired back. He was quoting me 2 weeks ago when I was talking to him. He's like, we're at like 2.3% unemployment in the state of Utah. He goes, so getting people to come back is hard. And if you don't mind me saying, we're heading into baseball playoffs. So I use this as a term. Our own hiring here for shop employees in particular, we were batting like 100 through the summer. It was crazy. We couldn't get anybody to stick or even accept jobs. After the first full week of September, that started relieving a little bit as far as getting people coming in to do the interviews. We raised all of our hourly rates significantly to try to attract more people. But even at that, the number of folks that are starting and just stopping it's been pretty disconcerting, to be quite honest with you, to have someone come in, you train them for a week, and they end up moving on.
So in real, it's obviously affecting timelines. So in real world, let's say a distributor or client comes to you and says, we've got this island booth. We want We want to have it at Expo, for example, which you've got to ship by mid February. When are you wanting to get that confirmed and out on the floor to make sure that you can meet those timelines at this point?
It's a good point. We've got several opportunities for Expo West right now, and finding we're not the only builder who's parroting the same message. Right. Get your orders in early December, and so that we can start planning for them and getting them in. Part of that is driven by the expectation for a lot of business in Q1, and so that's gonna that's a positive. Don't get me wrong, but never did I ever imagine we'd be in a place where, say a 30 by 30 custom build, which normally would be 20-25 business days to produce, getting graphics worked out, all that good stuff, is in some cases, 40-45 business days, dependent on what materials are needed for that build.
Well, that's really good to know. Obviously, we're talking to clients like that, and knowing those timelines and sharing that wherever we can, whether they become a client or not, is good to know. Just because they've got a plan too, and you've got a plan, and it's interesting. Looking ahead to the future, is there any sense in the industry of quote unquote normalcy by mid 2022, or is it going to be 2023, or even at the end of 2023?
So the estimates right now are that economically, our industry will fully recover by end of Q2 2022. There's some caution in saying that and hearing it for what it really is, because the supply chain issues are not anticipated to really resolve themselves, and that's a lot of things have to fall into place for what I'm about to say. Supply chain issues are not really looking to fall back into quote unquote normal until sometime midpoint of 2023. So, while from a revenue standpoint, there's recovery targeted for end of Q2 2022. You've got a whole nother year beyond that before people believe that the actual supply chain is going to kind of right itself, and whatever right itself looks like, again, we don't really know what that new normal, I hate that term, from a supply chain standpoint looks like. So we've got a lot of headwinds. It's not just our industry. One of the tariff advocacy work that a committee that I've been on involves people from U.S. pork manufacturers, U.S. steel, the RV manufacturers of the United States Association. There's big industries facing the exact same issues that we are. So there's going to be some headwinds for the next year and a half.
Yeah, actually, was going to be my last question. The advocacy you've done and others in the industry have done to congressional leaders and all of that. Mm-hmm. Did you get some relief out of that was palpable? Or did you get out of anything that you guys really wanted? Or just making them aware that we're here?
Well, I think there's your number one win. Your number one win is that if we put bookends on from today back to say March 15th, you would be hard pressed to really find anybody on Capitol Hill that even knew our industry, much less understood it, and much less understood the economic impact, positive economic impact we have on the GDP annually. If you go to the other end of that, to where we are today, they at least know, and people have a greater understanding. And this goes from direct conversations with congressmen and women and senators alike to their staffs. It's been fun and educational, albeit painful, building these relationships actually, and actually getting reach outs now from some of these teams where they're checking in. How are things going? And which has been good. I'm gonna carve off of, and that was all that was all talking about stimulus, grant money, and we're still hard at work on that. Chris Griffin and his role at EDPA is working still daily, very, very hard on some upcoming grant opportunities that's specifically carved out for our industry that we're keeping our fingers crossed on. But the tariff side, I put it this way: we've had a lot of end roads, which has been nice. We kind of got kicked in the shins this last Tuesday when the current administration announced that they really have no plans to change the tariff protocols that were put in place for the last administration.
Yeah, I remember seeing
that. Matter of fact, they intend on potentially expanding upon them, which is tough because it's creating a lot of additional costs to U.S.-based manufacturing right now. Its intended plan was to create costs for countries that weren't necessarily dealing in a fair manner, China being one, on the global market. But in fact, what it's done is, August, sorry, I've got lots of data in my head. August is a great example. There was $7.6 billion in taxes paid by American businesses based just on those tariffs. It's the highest number since well before, you could go back three administrations, and we've never seen them up that high.
Yeah. Wow. Kevin, it's always good to catch up with you. I appreciate the information, insight, and all the work you do on behalf of the industry. Thanks again for making time. I appreciate it.
You bet. Appreciate it as always, Tim.
All right.
Take care.
Take care. And yes, thanks again to Kevin Carty, Executive Vice President at Classic Exhibits, for this week's Trade Show Guy Monday Morning Coffee. One good thing I'm going to share before I go, and that, of course, is National Basketball Association. Yes, it's that time of year where my wife says there's another game on of college football, NFL, basketball, the WNBA's wrapping up their championship. All sorts of stuff is happening in October, and she's not a big sports fan, but I am, so I watch what I can when I can. But nonetheless, the NBA preseason's underway. It won't be long before the regular season gets underway, and we're off and running again on yet another National Basketball Association season. I love watching basketball. Love playing it when I was a kid, and I shoot hoops now and then. Anyway, thanks for watching. Check us again here. The blog is TradeshowGuyBlog.com, and the main site, TradeshowGuy.net. And let's do this again here soon.